So just to give a quick highlight of this session. So we've set up this Anaplan Heroes series just to shed spotlight on the leaders within the Anaplan space who mastered the art of what is possible on the platform. Also, we wanted to showcase how they think, how they plan, and how they are progressing in their careers as well. Now, for today's session, we have Mike, who is the Anaplan Center of Excellence lead at Cardinal Health. Mike, welcome to the session.
Thank you so much, Ankit, and thank you for giving me this opportunity as well.
Absolutely. So just Mike, I'd like to let the audience know more about you. So you've obviously worked quite a bit within the EPM space across business verticals, and also led data-driven consulting, the consulting projects, as well as you are also committed to making a difference within the healthcare community. Today we'll be touching certain, going through certain questions with Mike, some mostly professional, some personal, just to get an idea of how a center of excellence structure works, how Anaplan has changed the way Cardinal Health does their planning, and also get an understanding of just what Mike thinks the future of Anaplan is and how even career-wise individuals can be successful. So Mike, good to start?
Awesome. Let's get started.
Awesome. Perfect. We will definitely have a Q&A at the end of the session. So anyone who has any questions, they can leave their questions in the chat and we'll circle back to it right at the end of the session. So Mike, let's start with you. Let's start with your current role at Cardinal Health, and if you can shed some light on that.
Sure, absolutely. I manage the Anaplan Center of Excellence. I'm actually a part of the transformation team, the finance transformation team at Cardinal Health. And I lead the Anaplan Center of Excellence at Cardinal Health. I have an amazing team, both onshore and offshore. And together, we help support the planning processes of several different business units, and also manage a consolidation model where we take data from all forecast and budget data from every single business unit, bring it all together, consolidate it, and enable enterprise-wide reporting. So that's our consolidation model. And we also have an SG&A model, which helps with SG&A planning for budget specifically. Right. So that's a little bit about us. That's a little bit about our team. I am doing a huge disservice to my team members by saying hey, that's all we do, because I know that they do quite a bit, right? But at a high level, that's what our team does.
Perfect. So what would you say is probably the most exciting part of your job?
The most exciting part of our job. Think when I was first brought on to Cardinal Health, our Anaplan practice was pretty broken, right? If I remember correctly, when I was coming in, my VP who hired me, she said, Mike, I'm giving you a Titanic, which has already hit the iceberg, right? So you can almost imagine the state that Anaplan was in. But we were able to come in and take something which was broken and start fixing it. And there is inherent joy in taking something broken and actually fixing it and making it work. And that's what makes me passionate about coming into work every single day. That's where I find my joy. And when I think about broken things, right? It's not only the model itself which was broken. It was basically some of our processes, right? It was also some of our transformation ideals. The team essentially was broken as well, right? So there were several different areas where we had to go and kind of just fix from the ground up. And over the past 2 years, I think we have stopped the bleeding, so to speak, right? And we have set the Titanic back on course, and we are now accelerating the Titanic towards its destination. So
that's great to know. I think I love transformational journeys, and especially when you kind of bring something back to life where you knew that most of the people had given up on it. I think that's always an amazing story. So I kind of then understand what are the questions that I need to ask today as well. But I think one thing that I would like to add in there, ask from you is, how did you come across it? How Anaplan in the first place, and how has your journey been kind of growing within the Anaplan space?
Sure. So when I started off my career, I was actually a business intelligence consultant. I was doing a lot of SAP business objects, and that was what I thought my career was going to be, right? And somewhere in that process, there was an SAP BPC requirement, a business planning and consolidation project, that came up within our firm, right? And I was in a small firm back then, and I think my managing director was like, hey, this is an opportunity to learn a brand new technology. Who wants to do it, right? And I was the first one to shoot my hand up and say I want to do this, right?
Yeah.
So with SAP BPC, I got introduced to EPM, or planning, right? And after that, I actually moved on to EY, which is a bigger consulting firm doing SAP BPC. And my senior manager, I was working on a project, and my senior manager at that time, after 2 or 3 years into the project, he wanted to set up a new Anaplan practice within Ernst & Young. And he tapped me on the shoulder and he was like, I want you, I need you on my team. And me, my senior manager, and another manager on the team started out with creating a practice around Anaplan, right? So he was the brains and I was the hands. And at one point of time, almost every single POC that that we built out while establishing this practice, right, knew nothing about Anaplan, by the way. This was 5 or 6 years ago, right? Every single thing, every single POC that we had to do, I learned how to do it, and I coded it and built out these POCs. That's how I cut my teeth. I was still a part of the SAP practice back then, but then we actually won our first major Anaplan project at EY.
Okay.
And halfway into that project, we realized that that we needed to build a security model within Anaplan, right, to manage centrally Anaplan security for all of the different Anaplan models within that particular client environment. And unfortunately, this was something that was supposed to be done much earlier, but as you would have it, it did not get done. And we had 3 months to implement a security model within Anaplan. And the very same senior manager said, okay, you need to, we need Mike, because if anyone can do it, Mike can do it. He actually pulled me from the SAP practice and basically said, okay, come on over and build us the security model. If you know anything about the security model, right, it's actually very different from traditional planning models that you would actually build out in Anaplan. But I came in, started building out the security model, and built out a comprehensive security model, which I think is still being used today. And then I decided, hey, I'm not going to be doing SAP anymore. I don't want to learn German, right? And so I basically said, okay, Anaplan, it is going to be for me. And then from then on, I've practically been concentrating on Anaplan and never looked back.
That's a great story. I'm glad you moved over from SAP to Anaplan, that we're getting to have this session now. But I think then kind of, set up right where you could probably provide me some insight on how do you think, since you've seen, multiple intelligence systems, you've seen ERPs, now you've seen Anaplan, what do you think the future of business planning is with evolving technology, right? Doesn't have to be just Anaplan, but then what do you think as a whole? How does it look like?
I think the future of business planning, I think will be more data driven and more data focused as we go on, right? We are going to be ingesting lots and lots of data, and the art and the challenge of planning going forward will be how do we get lots and lots of data, right? At the most granular level, make sense of it, and start creating a bunch of what if scenarios, right? And based on right now, I think businesses do one or two, maybe three what if scenarios, but with a lot of data and additional computation power, will come the ability to basically do maybe a plethora of what if scenarios, right? And the using AI, right? We will be able to say, hey, this is exactly what you should be doing to increase revenue for this particular business unit. You should be focusing on drivers 3, 4, and 7 to base, and this is exactly how much percentage of driver B you need to increase, or driver C you need to increase, and AI will automatically give that to you. And then on top of that, you will be able to make strategic decisions on whether you want to follow recommendation A or recommendation B based on data, not only at the top level but also at the granular level, and you will be able to put your human impetus onto AI generated models, which give you a path, and obviously with your input, you'll be able to tweak that path in a certain way. And I think that's the future of planning, right? So just to recap, I know I said a lot, don't want this to be a word salad, right? It's going to be data driven, right? At the most detailed level, we will be able to generate multiple what if scenarios, and using AI, we will be given a recommended path, right, of steps that you can take to achieve your business outcomes. And the human element is always going to be there, right? You can tweak based on your intuition, what path you would like to follow on your business journey or on your planning journey.
That makes sense, actually. I feel like, a lot of the companies get tunnel vision in looking at a platform as something that will transform their business processes rather than just looking at a complete bouquet of, all the technology, because at the end of the day, technology is just an enabler. I think if you could probably shed some light on a scenario in which somewhere where you could involve, you were able to introduce some tech and it actually improved your planning process. I mean, we're talking about Anaplan, but if there's anything else that we could probably talk about.
Yeah, sure. So when we're thinking about our planning process and when we are thinking about our finance transformation journey, Anaplan isn't the whole and sole focus of our journey or roadmap or anything like that, right? For planning purposes, like I talked about, everything kind of starts with data. So we have a centralized data repository on GCP, on the Google Cloud platform, and we are ensuring that all of the data that gets fed into Anaplan is coming from GCP, and all of the data that Anaplan is generating is also fed back to GCP, right? So that centralization of data, right? Whether it is source data or plan data, in one central location enables us to report of and make decisions, more importantly, off of a single source of truth, right? So yeah, we've always heard about that single source of truth, right? And the importance of it, right? But even right now, in organizations, it becomes very, very hard because of the multiple different systems that people consume data from to go or feed off of that single source of truth, right? So as a part of our strategy, we have made a decision to leverage GCP, and we ingest data from there, feed data into there, and make sure that that is a part of our planning and decision making process. And we are seeing really good results of making the switch, right? One thing that that we automatically get with that is, right, there is no need to do data reconciliations, right? And having been in the business world for so long, right, people spend a lot of time on data reconciliations, right? Reconciling data from one system to another, understanding why data is broken, that has multiple different downsides, right? How are you sure that you're planning off of the right data? We eliminate all of those problems by using this approach, and that has automatically started delivering results for us, right? And it's making our planning process in and of itself. Think about all of the different reconciliation steps that are embedded into the planning process, right? They're defunct.
Makes sense. Absolutely. I think that centralization is definitely important. I think, but then there's still some level of pros and cons in both approaches, and you got to find the happy middle for your company as well, whichever works best for you. For some companies, absolute centralization is perfect, but then for some companies, a complete centralization might never be even possible, right? So I think we got to look at for each company for its own, and look at a strategy for them as well.
Yeah. And we are seeing some of that, right? So even some business units within our organization, right? It's some business units are on QuickBooks, right? How do you get that data like some of the smaller ones, right? So how do you centralize that data, right? Does it make sense to actually even centralize that data?
Absolutely.
The effort of actually going through and centralizing this, there's a cost benefit analysis in there as well that has to be baked in, right? So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is a case by case basis, and I will actually keep that in mind. So should we all.
Great. Perfect. I'll now move the vision more towards Anaplan and how Anaplan is performing at Cardinal Health. So I would you mentioned a couple of models right at the beginning, but I would also like to understand how Anaplan as a whole is helping you plan better. What are the different stakeholders that are using Anaplan? How you guys are using Anaplan? How does the whole organization depend on Anaplan?
Yeah. I heard two questions in there, Ankit, right? How is Anaplan helping, and how is Anaplan being used as well? So let me tackle both of that, right? So how is Anaplan helping, right? When we are getting into when we are getting a particular planning process within Anaplan, all right, we are concentrating on two things actually. We want to simplify the process, and we also want to standardize the process, right? So when we are taking a business unit's planning process and bringing it into Anaplan, we have a team where we are documenting the end-to-end business process for a particular business unit's planning, And we are asking the hard questions, right? Like, why exactly are you doing this? Like, what are you doing, right? And we are understanding what it is that they're doing, and we are eliminating, like, some bottlenecks, some steps up front, right? Like, kind of like, transforming the process in and of itself slightly, right? Again, right, like, these guys know exactly what it is that they're doing, right? So, like, they have refined their processes quite a bit, but, like, in some cases, like, we are still able to bring in fresh, nuanced perspective to simplify their processes slightly, right? So we go ahead and do that, and then because, like, we are working with multiple different business units as well, we are bringing a level of standardization to the planning process of, like, some of these business units as well, right? So if some of these business units live in Excel, right? Like, the amount of standardization that you can bring to their actual process is very limited, right? Because it's a free for all. It's the wild, wild west out there, right? So by the virtue of, like, bringing some of these planning processes into Anaplan, we are automatically, like, bringing a level of standardization so that, like, people start planning in the same way, right? So that in and of itself, like, is ensuring that, like, all of the different business units march to the same drumbeat, right? And so I think, like, that is how Anaplan is helping. So how is Anaplan being used? Primarily, like, it's basically, like, setting up, like, an architecture where different business units can plan in their own separate specific ways, right? But we are ensuring that, like, no matter how they plan, all of the business units are talking to our consolidation model in the exact same language, right? So so all of the data from all of these various different business unit models gets fed into the central consolidation model, and top-down planning is enabled through the consolidation model, right? So that is how we are currently using Anaplan. In the future, right, like, we want to find a happy intersection where tops-down planning meets bottoms-up planning, right? And when we are able to, like, sync up tops down and bottoms up planning perfectly within this organization, I think, like, we would be at, like, our ideal end state.
Great. I think from that, I would also like to understand. So, what does the journey of Anaplan within Cardinal look like? Where do you guys think from there? Let's say your end state is for your financial planning, for your top down and bottom up to start talking to each other and be in sync at the end of it. But then what's next after that? Are you also looking at different use cases?
This is going to be a long journey, Ankit, right? Like, this is going to be a long journey, right? So what I've talked about, right? Like, it's not a 1 or 2 year transformation. Like, this is going to be, like, I don't know, like, maybe even, like, a 10 to 15 year transformation. All right. So who knows what's going to happen at that point of time, right? Maybe, like, we'll see. We'll see, like, where technology leads us. But this is our plan for now, and I think, like, it's a good, like, 10 to 15 year plan. Unless, like, powers, but that we decide that, like, it needs to happen sooner. So we'll make it happen sooner, and then, like, we'll see what happens after that, right?
And is there anything on Anaplan's roadmap that you are kind of looking forward to?
Yeah. So I think, like, there's a lot of predictive and I think, like, it is precision insights. I forget, like, what exactly, like,
predictive insights.
Predictive insights, right? So predictive insights is something that that I'm actually, like, pretty curious about, that I'm excited about. I want to, like, delve into that space. I think, like, Anaplan has a pretty good AI roadmap as well, of how they want to, like, leverage AI within Anaplan natively. which is something that that I'm excited about. Um, I remember seeing their Anaplan's AI guru talking about their vision of how AI is going to be enabled within Anaplan, and I think and I thought it was actually pretty. Um, I thought it was a very solid plan, right? So definitely excited about how we can enhance Anaplan modeling with advanced AI capabilities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I think almost all technologies are moving towards that direction. I'm glad that, Anaplan already has that on their roadmap. I myself am looking forward to, what they end up doing. Hopefully we can see that in the near future. Now, Mike, I'd like to understand that, you formed a center of excellence at Cardinal, but what's the inherent need of a center of excellence from your perspective? Because Anaplan themselves, when they start talking about implementing Anaplan, they're always a big advocate of the users having basically the customer having their own center of excellence to kind of take over the responsibility of managing the platform. So, what do you think, according to in your lens, is the need for such a center of excellence?
Yeah. So I think especially at Cardinal Health, right? We tried the other approach and it did not work, right? So and we tried democratizing Anaplan and saying hey, here's a tool that you guys can use to build your models, right? And what happened was different business units went and they actually built out their own models. Sometimes they hired external help or they tried doing that, right? And what ended up happening was when you democratized everything, and said hey, you guys build your own centers of excellence, we found that models were not talking to each other, they were not speaking the same language, right? Yeah. So we discovered a need for having someone centrally manage the ability of all of these models to essentially talk to each other, so that there is a connected planning vision. And I don't see how disconnected centers of excellence can lead to a connected planning environment. Does that make sense? So we tried that approach at Cardinal Health. It did not work, and now this approach of having a center of excellence is actually really helping out. There's one thing that that we tweaked though to that model, right? So even though there is a central center of excellence, we expect the members of our CoE to live with the business units themselves, right? So so there is for example, right, there is a dedicated model builder from the Anaplan Center of Excellence who sits with the nuclear business unit, and he helps the nuclear business unit, period. Right? And he actually becomes the SME for the nuclear business, right? So he is there for about I don't know, maybe 2 to 3 years or 3 to 4 years to help support nuclear's planning needs, build out additional models for nuclear if needed, right? And he owns that nuclear space, right? But he's loosely aligned with the center of excellence, so that we can make sure that he is following the standards, and he is able to communicate with the consolidation model and all of that, right? So even though he is technically a part of my team, theoretically he sits with the business unit.
Absolutely. I think that is a very interesting idea, and especially with an organization of the size of Cardinal Health, kind of centralize everything and keeping one team that engages with the business teams on a need basis. I think that would probably not work. So I think that's a great idea, kind of making expanding your team and then also getting buy-ins from the business units as you involve your team members in their processes as well. So could you, if you don't mind sharing that, how does your team then look like? How do you structure it? So how does the central team look like, for example, under you? And then how, obviously I understand that the rest of the model builders are sitting in the BUs, with working with the BU heads.
Yeah. We basically have the central team, right? And I think it's not how the team is structured, how we are, how the center of excellence manages the interactions between all of these different model builders.
Yeah.
It's more of a process question, Ankit, and not necessarily a structure question, right?
Yeah.
We have regular touch points, right? We basically have a team structure in place. We have a team in place, actually, I should say, that all loves to talk to each other and be with each other. So that makes our interactions a lot more fluid and a lot more agile, right? So we have almost an open door policy over here at Cardinal Health, and anybody can ask anyone any question it is that they need, right? And I think I have been lucky enough to build a team where everybody is able to just talk to everybody, and everybody is in the loop in terms of what's happening across the organization, right? And what I mean to say is, right, I am ensuring that the central strategy and also the BU specific strategies are known by everyone within the Anaplan Center of Excellence. And I'm trying to ensure that everybody is in the loop with everything, right? So it's not necessarily a team structure, right? It's basically the culture that we have been able to build out over here within the Anaplan Center of Excellence at Cardinal Health, and the ability for us to have fluid conversations where everybody is being kept in the loop with everything that is that is enabling success for us. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah. I think so. You're alluding more towards a flat structure, wherein it's more of the coordination that you guys do is what is actually making it function more efficiently, rather than kind of making a tree structure altogether.
Exactly, and it's completely flat, right? That's what everybody in the Anaplan Center of Excellence, we said we don't want to have any hierarchies. We want to keep everything flat. We are all in this together.
Yeah, understood. Absolutely. So with that, what do you think were some of the key success factors, apart from your team, of course? But what are the key success factors that led to the successful implementation of Anaplan? Not just from an implementation perspective, but also how do you get user buy-in? How do you kind of make sure that the platform is successful as a whole?
Yeah. I think buy-in from top leadership is very, very important. Thankfully, I have an amazing VP, who manages all of that. All right. So she has been instrumental to rally top leadership and convince them about the benefits of Anaplan, and she has set a great vision for our team, and she's able to get top leadership aligned on that vision. So that has been extremely helpful for us. And so I would definitely say buy-in from top leadership is definitely one of the factors for success. And number two, I cannot say enough about the team, right? It's our work ethic, and it's the culture that we have developed, right? That's another leading success factor for us. And number three, right, because we have an open door policy and all of that, that is kind of permeating towards the interactions that we have with our business stakeholders as well, right? So just we are bringing the Anaplan Center of Excellence team members along the ride for the Anaplan journey. They are going and bringing in the business stakeholders along the Anaplan journey with us, right? So by using very similar tactics, right? Open door policy, right? You can come and ask us anything about Anaplan ever, right? So I think that is permeating through the organization, and that has also started delivering results, because people now want to work with Anaplan, and they also want to work with Anaplan CoE team members, right? So I would say that those are the three critical things which have enabled success so far.
Yeah, and I also feel one aspect of it, which alluding to your team as a whole, it's also very important to kind of send across a consistent message, even with the flat structure that you guys have. Almost every team member is in a way a champion of the platform, and kind of is promoting it with all the business users. But I think that also should be very, very important for you guys as well. And as you went on this journey, and as you've implemented more and more, use cases and brought on more users, any specific, unexpected benefits that you've seen from it, where you felt like, okay, we are implementing a planning platform. It's going to give us connected planning, but there's something that happened which you were not expecting. And it just kind of took you aback, but then you felt like, okay, you'll take all the wins as you could.
Unexpected benefits. Can't think of anything right now, Ankit, unfortunately. But if I do come across and I think these are expected benefits that we are seeing. We're seeing a lot of expected benefits, right? But unexpected benefits, I will think about that. That's a good question. And if I come across something, I'll let you know maybe later when we meet.
No, absolutely. No, that's okay. I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but that's just how the format is, right?
So, that's
okay. Fine. We can always discuss that later. So I think moving away now, spoken so much about Anaplan, but to kind of more towards you and your journey so far. When you started in this role, right, and given where you are now, if you could give yourself some advice right at the beginning when you were starting off, what would it be?
Yeah. So as you can imagine, right, I get it was a huge transformation effort for us, right? And some of the hurdles that we were facing were tremendous, humongous, actually, right? So at that point of time, I did feel overwhelmed, taking a look at the amount of things that needed to get done, and over the past 2 years, right, I've started taking a different approach, right? And this has been working wonders for me, in terms of in terms of not only my professional performance, but also my personal performance and all of that, right? Taking every day as it comes, right? I've coming from a consulting background, right? It was hey, I was much more fast paced, and I was also always thinking about results, right? And so it was always hey, have you won the Super Bowl? Have you won the Super Bowl? Have you won the Super Bowl? Right? Every single year, or but from there, I started taking more of a process oriented approach. And with that process oriented approach came the realization that I have to tackle every single day on its own merits, right? Have I been successful today, right? Like, have I been, did I do or did I accomplish what it is that I set out to do today? And not really like, worry about like, uh, the tremendous amount of like, transformation that is ahead of us, right? So, so, um, like improve like your day-to-day process, right? And that will improve like your outcome, right? So so instead of worrying about the outcomes, I started like worrying a lot more about like process, especially like day-to-day process, in terms of like how am I performing on like this one particular day. And that like shifted my focus away from like outcomes and more into like setting up like a way for us to succeed multiple times, like on an ongoing basis, and like build a culture of success. And like I think like if you fix your process, like the outcomes will come by themselves.
Makes sense. Makes sense. And I think if you have a larger vision in place, then constantly only looking at the end goal and not really, looking at the smaller tasks as they come, I think that can kind of, set you up for failure in some cases as well, because you're not enjoying the small wins. You're only looking for what's at the end. And that road might be way too long for you to even, reach. And then that might demotivate you at the end of it.
Yeah. And it has actually had like a tremendous impact on like my personal life itself, right? Like the quality of like or like the happiness that I experience on a day-to-day basis is not dependent upon like a future outcome, like which may or may not happen, right? Like but like it is dependent upon hey, like was I successful today, right? And
makes sense.
And if I was successful today, like if I was able to like send out all of the emails that I wanted to send out, if I'm able to like do like one solution, like one complex modeling challenge, and if I work out, I'm happy.
Yeah, perfect. That sounds like an amazing plan to actually stay happy, I think.
Yeah.
I think has it also changed your leadership style as a whole, as your outlook has changed?
I would definitely say so, right? Like so I'm encouraging like my team to like follow a similar approach, right? And so like they have like slowly like started like they know like that like eventually like we'll get the wins, but like are we doing what it is that we're supposed to do today, right? And yeah, like I have gotten much more relaxed in terms of like how I'm leading, right? So I don't know if you watch cricket. I watch a lot of cricket, right? Like so I can say that my leadership style almost like went from a Virat Kohli style of captaincy to an MS Dhoni style of captaincy. So I could definitely like see that change in myself.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Even if you don't watch cricket, I mean, who can not watch the greats of the game, right? Almost everyone knows. And then, is there any advice apart from taking one day at a time and enjoying the small wins? Any suggestion that you would have for the leaders that are coming down the line, that you would give, any advice that you would give them?
Yeah, sure. Think like work is such a huge part of our lives, right? And making sure that like that you come into a culture where you're happy to like just come in and like work with the people around you, right? Like happy to like come and work with your team. That's important, right? So like concentrate on culture and concentrate on like making sure that like you build as leaders, like we have a lot of control on like the culture of our team, right? So let's make sure that like that we build a great culture within our team for ourselves, so that not only you as a leader, but also like your team members are happy to come in to work every single day.
Okay. Makes sense. I think now moving the lens away for the last part of the session, I want to move more towards your personal life. Like you mentioned that you've changed the way you look at your wins, and and that has also helped you with your personal life as well. How do you unwind after a long day or a long week? What is your go-to guilty pleasure that how do you unwind?
I'm working out, and I'm playing tennis quite a bit more. And Sundays is set for me. Sundays, like I always go to church, right? So and then I probably cook on Sundays as well. Nothing crazy, honestly. I have kids now, right? So Saturday, ballet class for my girls, and then I go to playground with them, and and do all of that. I'm 35 or 34. I'm going to be 35 soon, right? So I'm living the dad life, and I'm enjoying it.
That is great. And you mentioned that you also like cooking. Anything specific? Any favorite cuisine that you have that you like to cook or eat?
I think the Hyderabadi cuisine is the best cuisine in the world. So biryani, and I cook awesome mutton curry. Nice. It's definitely back to my roots. It's back to my Hyderabadi dishes. Everything else, I love food. I'm a huge foodie, but everything else that I want to get, I go out and get at a restaurant. But home cooking is home cooking.
No, absolutely. I'm going to be in Hyderabad next month, so I might just take some tips from you. So I'll where to go.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And then any mantra that you have that keeps you going every day, right? So when you wake up in the morning, you're energized for the next day, and you want to go for it. So what keeps you, motivated?
I want to perform for my team, right? So that's it, right? I want to make sure that I perform for my team, and there are people who have put their trust in me, so I want to make sure that I perform for them, and it's the people, right? I want to show up for my people.
Perfect. Great. I think Mike, that's the set of questions that I had, but I would also like to open up the floor for any questions that the audience might have. We do have quite a crowd right now, so I'm just waiting. I'll just wait on their questions as well.
Hey, Ankit and Mike, I got two. Abhishek is asking, can you let us in about your most challenging project?
I think my most challenging project was definitely the first project that I ever did, right? The security model that that I talked about. It was definitely extremely tight timelines, right? When I was brought in, I think we were 2 months away from go live, and somebody, some solution architect, and remember this was the very first model that I was building as well. And some solution architect came in and gave a security model or designed a security model which don't even work, right? And so I had understand the requirements, completely redesign the security model from the ground up without any help from a solution architect or someone who has done Anaplan officially before, right? and I had go convince my senior managers and all of them that this was the right approach, and basically build out that security model almost from requirements all the way to implementation, because we could not go live without the security model, which was another huge challenge, right? So all of the work that the other teams have done as well would have been ground up to a halt if the security model wasn't in place. So within 2 months, we basically had build out a comprehensive security model, which also talked with an inbuilt in-house security management system, where people were going to go in and request security. So establishing all of that within the span of I think 2 or 3 months, that being the very first project as well, that was killer. But yeah, that was definitely my first project and my hardest project. I don't think I've come across a project that was harder than that.
But I think that kind of set you up in the right path as well then, right? Having your first project as something that is so
the hardest one. Yeah.
So that's
and you know this, Ankit, right? You don't, Anaplan is used for planning, right? It's FP&A, it's demand planning, or supply chain planning.
Yeah.
How do you build a security model with an Anaplan? Right?
I'm gonna pick your brains on that one sometime later. I mean, probably not a question for the public portal to kind of answer, but I'll pick your brains on exactly what that was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. I do have Arpita who's asking a question in the chat as well. She is asking any specific Anaplan features that you think Anaplan should introduce. Maybe something that you want that maybe that's not on the roadmap.
Yeah, I know they again I come from the business intelligence world, right? The reporting world. I think there's a lot of work that they can do in terms of management reporting and having a comprehensive a reporting feature, right? Which allows for report bursting based on security and all of that, right? So I would love for them to just enhance some of their reporting capabilities, or come up with better reporting solution than management reporting, because I don't know if management reporting really is working or is being used extensively. But
yeah, I think that it's a feature that's amazing, but it needs more work right now.
Yeah,
before it becomes really, really helpful. What I would think that the moment that question came up, some thought came into my head immediately is the user management Anaplan. How you have to kind of manage users.
I think they're coming up with something like that.
Yeah,
they are coming up with something like that. We'll have to see. It's I don't think it's released to public yet, but last I heard, I think they are coming up with something for user management. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, let's hope it's more central rather than distributed as it is right now.
Yeah. They're changing that up, which is good.
Good. Yeah. Was that any other questions that you can see?
I just have one last one in my chat. What are your thoughts on Gen AI impacting or enhancing platforms like Anaplan? This is from Divyanshu.
Gen AI, right? AI, I'm a huge believer in using and leveraging AI for planning. And even for just day-to-day stuff, right? So I'm always on a Perplexity, asking Perplexity questions and stuff like that, right? So I'm a huge believer in Gen AI and AI in general. It's new technology. We still have to figure out how to properly leverage it. We are still in the ground stages of understanding how we can truly incorporate Gen AI, or even just AI in general within planning systems. I think there's still a lot of work that we need to do there. but I see it as having tremendous impact in terms of how we plan or set up our planning processes. I don't know what all of the implications are as of right now. Sorry, I couldn't be more helpful.
I think the doubt that you were having answering the question kind of encompasses everyone's question around Gen AI. I think that is privacy. I think that is something where a lot of people kind of take a step back on whether my data is going to stay my data at the end of it.
Yeah. So I have to find this talk again, Ankit. I have it in one of my emails, right? So I think Anaplan's plan is to have just dedicated workspaces where Gen AI, where data is stored and AI can be enabled on top of. That is going to be specific to a particular customer, right? So
okay.
So they are walling off data in customer workspaces for AI to operate on. So they're not taking that data or customer sensitive data into a central system, right? Yeah. So there are ways in which Anaplan is actually addressing that. I have to find the talk and I have to re-watch it or re-listen to it. But when I heard it, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So they are building contingencies around it, or at least Anaplan
find it. I'll be very interested in listening.
I'll forward that to you. I'll forward that to you.
Perfect. I think we're right on time. So Mike, first of all, I would like to thank you for taking our time today, especially for Anaplan Heroes. I think it's a great concept that our team has come up with. It gives us an opportunity to talk with people who've done great work in the Anaplan space. And I'm really glad that I got a chance to connect with you in front of an audience, and they could also listen to your insights and your experience.
Absolutely, and we have to make it in person next time.
Absolutely, the next time I'm in Atlanta, or if you end up being in New Delhi, for sure.
Absolutely.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much, guys.